Hello and welcome to Edinburgh Business Stories. EBS is hosted by myself, Alex Richards of Umore, a video production studio based in Edinburgh and Bristol, and Alan Smith of Action Coach, providing business coaching throughout Edinburgh and the Lothians. If you aren't already, remember to subscribe, and I hope you enjoy this upcoming episode of Edinburgh Business Stories. Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so we've got a long journey to go on with the many interesting things you've been up to in business. But right now, give us a snapshot of what you're up to.
I am building a professional services group. Simpson Marwick Group has been an embryonic project for the last couple of years, but we're in early stage growth of that. I have a consultancy, Entrepreneur in Residence, helping businesses with revenue of 1 to 10 million scale. I do a bit in charity, very passionate about Lukey House, Scotland's National Neurological Respite Centre, and I am involved in an AI startup. So that's what I can remember today. I'm sure there's other things, but those are the big ones.
So let's go back to the beginning, and you go back as early as you like. How did your whole entrepreneurial journey start?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was that really annoying kid from early on that always had ideas about how to make money. I don't know why I was so enamored with making money. I think it was probably because I could buy CDs or ghetto blasters or whatever was the order of the day. I was always been really into music. So I'm sure it was driven by a passion to buy music and devices to play it on. But I would be at family barbecues and I would have thought a day before that if I cooked some cookies or baked goods, I could sell it to my relatives. It sort of matured into secondary school. If you remember back in the day, there was the genre of the lads mag, the FHMs and the loadeds, and at the back of them they had old school classifieds, and I distinctly remember fake IDs. There was probably, what else do we have, posters, various things that I knew my audience, and this is an entrepreneur speaking, and I was probably been 15 at the time. There was demand for this stuff. Everybody in my hometown of Aberdeen wanted to get into the nightclubs. And back in the day, you didn't have to have a sophisticated government ID. Anything that was plausible, that the bouncer could just about justify, plausibly as being genuine, would get you in. And I hope I'm not going to be contacted by the authorities about misgivings that I had back in the day. But posters and IDs, I would do a trade-in. I remember buying and reselling pizzas. So figured out local supplier if I could buy en masse, and then on Friday nights down the back of the local spar there was demand for that. So any opportunity to make a few quid back in my teens and pre-teens was probably a thing. I was a paper boy. I remember I think I had 3 paper rounds at one point. I was in at 6 a.m. I would do the evenings, and then up in Aberdeen there was a paper on the Saturday called the Green Final,
I remember that, yeah.
And I would deliver that. Yeah, hustling. Like it's a weird thing. And there was nobody that sat me down and said, this is a thing you should do. It was just inherently part of what I always loved.
So can I just check on that? So you dealt in fake ID and then you went on to become a lawyer, is that right? just checking.
I think the appropriate answer is no comment. So.
I was going to say, where were your parents and all this? But what was there with it? Is it just like, what's he like? Or what was their approach to it?
So it's really interesting. I'd always, my father came from really humble beginnings and built his own business. And I'd always, from afar, admired what he'd done. I watched how hard he worked. I would say when I was growing up, he wasn't the dad that was frequently able to be there for sports days, to drop you off at school, to pick you up, because he was working and building a business. And I think consciously, subconsciously, I took that on. But he was never anybody that pushed me. My parents were, dad's a lawyer, mum's an educational psychologist. They were always guys that were there when you wanted to ask for help or get an opinion, or if you had a dark day, they would help you. If you had a success, they would celebrate it. But I wasn't one of those kids who was ever being pushed to be academic, pushed to be successful. They kind of let me get on with it and figure out my own way. I obviously was pretty good at selectively disclosing my enterprises. So yeah, they were supportive, but perhaps unaware of the adventures I was going on. Yeah. And that includes also just disappearing off for days. Like as a kid, I remember getting on my bike in Aberdeen, and I know we've got a shared history of the Northeast, and disappearing for 12, 14 hours and coming back at the setting of the sun. So yeah, they were supportive from afar in both my business endeavors and journey through life. So.
And so then, the pizzas dry up and the IDs only take you so far. What was then the step from school's done, what am I going to do?
So Yeah, it's funny. These things are in your brain and you forget about them. I went to a state school. I'm really proud of it. A good state school. I didn't come up from a real adversity. I had a lot of things in my favour. But the guidance teacher at my Cults Academy in Aberdeen, Sally Gordon, I think she was called, she was always really supportive. But if you remember back in the day, you're probably too young, Alex, but Alan will remember that there was this master computer that you went and you filled out this form of all these dots and answered questions, and the output was what you should be. And bizarrely, I remember this with HD clarity. I was to be a civil servant, which if anybody knows me, actually, if I'd been a mandarin in Whitehall, I think I would have been quite good. But most of the other civil service roles, which are mundane, structured, I couldn't think of anything worse. So I got my head down. I did my hires in 5th year. I remember failing my prelim at maths and going, shit, that's not good. I don't know if we're allowed to swear. You can bleep that out. And thought maths would be quite important. So I turned that around. So I got my hires. I think I got 5 A's. I stayed on for 6th year, but messed about mostly because I got where I wanted to go. And my guidance teacher, Sally Gordon, said, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a doctor, a lawyer? I think probably an accountant was on the radar. And having thought through all those scenarios, I dare to say it, and I'm sure many people who know me and love me would tell you this is not true, but I'm quite an argumentative bugger. I often think I'm right. I enjoy helping people. I like making money. And that, out of all the options, law was the thing that felt like it was most interesting and would serve me, best in my future endeavour. So went off to university, had a few options. I could have come down to Edinburgh. So my Edinburgh Business Story could have started earlier. I'm sure I would have found an enterprise for the good students of Edinburgh. But I had a group of really close pals who I'd grown up with, none of whom were very academic. One was a footballer, one was a golfer, one worked in oil and gas. And these guys I'd spent all my formative years from morning, noon and night hanging out with. And the thought of leaving my pals was too much for me. So I stayed and studied in Aberdeen. Again, there's a common theme I'm realizing as I'm speaking that will come through what we talk about today. I spent most of my university days playing sport. I played every sport you could, but hockey was my game. So played that and traveled the world playing hockey, traveled the UK playing hockey. I loved university from a social point of view. I think I had a relatively short, sheltered existence. And I'm sure I held the record for most notes in my end of term folders, because I'm so old we didn't have iPads and laptops when we went to lectures, that were photocopied from peers. So I typically attended probably about 30% of lectures. Again, Law Society regulator. I'm not sure if I'm going to be stripped of my practicing certificate, but I managed to pass my exams. I think I have this incredible ability to crash learn and retain information and then forget it really quickly, which interestingly, I think as a business person is a really helpful tool, particularly in professional advice circles. If you can remember a lot of information, analyze it and distill it, and then move on to the next thing, it's an asset. So I got my law degree, and I thought that was okay. I managed to blag my way through it, but I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't know where I was in my mindset at that time. I was wanting to build a business. I don't know what the business was going to be. So I spoke to people who owned businesses, and the common theme was be an accountant. Because once you understand a balance sheet, once you understand a P&L, cash flow statements, then wherever you choose to point that knowledge, your propensity to be successful is higher. So I went, okay, I'll go and be an accountant. So came down to Edinburgh, remember it distinctly, went to the milk rounds, walked into EY, walked into KPMG, walked into Deloitte. Deloitte gave me a non-relevant, as it was called, training opportunity. So went off and spent 2 years with Deloitte becoming a chartered accountant. That wasn't what I'd envisaged either. I remember distinctly 2 defining moments where I thought, I'm not going to be an accountant anymore. I was up at Tomatin Distillery in the Highlands, and we were auditing the whiskey barrels. Because of course, whiskey, very valuable commodity. You don't want your whiskey barrels to be diluted, to go astray. And in the depths of January, in my best young accountant gear, I was climbing up whiskey barrels, getting splinters in my legs, and I distinctly remember splitting the arse of my trousers. So that was after 4 years of academia and all the hard work. I thought that this wasn't what I'd signed up for. I think I imagined myself in a a Ferrari at that point, having climbed the world of accountancy. And I remember also auditing a taxi firm, Comcabs. I think they're still on the go this day. And we went over to an industrial estate outside Aberdeen and pulled into this nondescript grey building with my audit manager. And she said, right, Rob, you're going to be on casting this week. I went, casting? That sounds awesome. What's casting? And again, I'm aging myself terribly in this podcast. I got a pile of paper that, I kid you not, was this high. And there were these old dot matrix printers where they used to print out, they had dots down the side that kept them on track. And my job with tiny print size was for 2 weeks to add things up. Casting is what accountants used to call adding up. Nowadays, an AI model, you'd give it the data and it would churn it out. But that was what a highly educated or reasonably intelligent individual was tasked to do. So I decided I wasn't going to be an accountant. And that was a scary moment, because people don't get jobs with Deloitte and walk out the door. That they're a great business. Loads of leaders around the world have trained in Deloitte. So that was a difficult conversation. I don't think they could understand why I left. And I thought, right, what will I do now? I'll go and be a lawyer again. So I went back to university. You have to do a diploma in Scotland to become a lawyer. But I also thought, I love technology. I'm a geek. Like I've just installed a new bit of technology at my house that I was speaking to somebody about this morning and had to slap myself. I was getting excited about a door buzzer that can allow me to let people in and phones me on my phone remotely and opens doors. Everyone's got them, but I was happy that I've deployed that. So I thought I'll do a master's degree as well in IT and technology. So I did a diploma at Aberdeen in law, and I did an IT master's at Strathclyde remotely. And there was formed, I think, probably the pathway which I have gone on since, the core pathway. We'll maybe talk about some of the other side hustles. But bringing together law and technology and then going to work in Edinburgh traditional legal services business, I think the light bulb went on that this is an archaic sector that has not changed significantly for the last 40, 50 years. And with my take on law and how it could be improved in terms of giving advice, caring more for your clients, being more relatable, and layering in technology, there was a thing I could do. And that was the pathway I've gone down since. So.
Can you give us some examples of kind of where kind of things were archaic?
In legal services,
yeah.
They are. You speak in the past tense, Alan. They are still. There'll be lawyers hate. I mean, I created social media controversy this week by daring to say that I thought AI would replace large parts of the legal profession by 2030. I was jumped upon by lots of traditional lawyers saying that I'm the Antichrist. So I suspect more of that will follow. Why is law archaic? So the vast majority of small and medium law firms in the UK, and I've been really lucky, I've been working around the world for the last 3 years in professional services, so I've seen other jurisdictions as well, but people giving advice to personal clients is typically done in small offices, which doesn't have technology, businesses that don't have CRMs, that don't have workflows, that don't have data. These are norms in most other sectors and industries, but legal services, for personal legal services, it doesn't exist. I would say the mindset of lawyers is typically quite staid and traditional. I don't think it's changed much over the last 100 years. It's give a great outcome to the client, give good advice, care for the client, but do that on an hourly rate, charge, by the time spent in it. And ultimately, that drives a negative outcome often for the client, in that if you're going to make more money by the more time you spend on things, does that encourage you to work efficiently and innovatively? No, it doesn't. So the industry has a fundamental challenge in that the core traditional way of billing clients is based on taking longer to do things and being inefficient at doing them. And generally, your archetypal law firm, and I would extend this into professional advice givers, so accountants would fall into this, and we structure businesses of intelligent people to share back office services, because often those intelligent people are so intelligent that they maybe are on the spectrum, and the ability to manage and grow businesses like a traditional entrepreneur or business leader would do is the trade-off for being an exceptional lawyer, because you're good at lawyering, because you're maybe not so good at leading, about innovating. And actually lawyers are indoctrinated from day one to see the worst case scenario and to avoid risk, which is the antithesis of being an entrepreneur. So the inherent DNA of a lawyer and the inherent characteristics of a law firm and the commercial drivers of the traditional legal model drive inefficiencies. Now, it's changing, but I would say the vast majority of law firms have done what they've always done, and that isn't changing quickly. So.
What does it really take to grow a business in Scotland today? This episode of Edinburgh Business Stories is brought to you by Henderson Logie, chartered accountants and business advisors who help owner-managed businesses grow, from those first steps as an entrepreneur through to a happy retirement. Based right here in Scotland, Henderson Logie knows what it takes to succeed locally. And through their membership of Prime Global, they help clients thrive internationally too. Their purpose? Helping their people, clients, and communities unlock their full potential, building legacies, creating wealth for local communities, and opening doors to future success. To learn more, get in touch with the Edinburgh team at Henderson Logie today. And this was then the clashing of those two things together is then the secret sauce that you brought into the space.
Yeah, I was super lucky. I trained at a great firm in Edinburgh, Todd's Murray, which had been around for hundreds of years. Phenomenal lawyers, worked for really charismatic people, learned a lot of really good grounding legal knowledge and habits and strategies. I was then really lucky, and I'm not sure if he's been on the podcast, but he should be. Stuart Hendry at MBM Commercial was who I often reference as my first boss. I have nothing but respect for Stuart and the business he's built, but I helped him open the doors on day one. I was his first trainee of MBM Commercial. And this was, again, a complete juxtaposition for where I'd been, traditional, established Edinburgh law firm, to a completely, greenfield site, innovative, disruptive, entrepreneurial. I think the strapline of their business is entrepreneurial lawyers. And that was a real dive into thinking differently. So take all the established norms of what you've experienced in a traditional law firm, and everything's in play for being challenged. And I absolutely loved that. And I think that's a theme that I've brought into businesses that I've been able to build. And ultimately, it was my, I think, third job in legal services, whereby I did go back to my home city of Aberdeen. I met my wife, and we spent 6 months going up and down the motorway. And ultimately, we decided that Aberdeen was going to be the base. I got an opportunity to join a legal business. And it was a small northeast law firm that had revenue, maybe 5-6 million, traditional client base, traditional way of doing things. And as a young lawyer, I got the keys to the litigation department. They'd lost the team, and there was a clear runway ahead to build something different. So I didn't have that normal legal hierarchy that you have in professional advice businesses of partners who've been there for 30 years, who you're waiting for them to retire or die. I didn't have that senior colleague who wanted the seat of the retiring or dying partner. I had this ability to run at something and to change it. So I naturally saw all the inefficiencies that I've talked about in terms of legal services, but focused on litigation, commercial litigation, and for large UK banks and building societies who demanded excellence in everything you did, demanded exceptional value. They really pushed you hard on the commercials. And the only way as a wee northeast of Scotland law firm to be successful and be relevant in that space was to come at it differently and to think about it differently. If you hadn't done that, there was no way we could have grown and been successful. So taking technology and layering it into law, and at this point, this is 15, 20 years ago, and this was pretty novel, replacing administrative tasks with coding, integrating multiple systems, bringing the client into the customer journey by making them a stakeholder in the transaction that they were involved in. We did speech recognition. We did early phase AI. I built this little boutique business that went from 5 people to 150 people by having brilliant people. I was super lucky. I didn't inherit a team. Everyone I hired, from hire 1 to 150, I interviewed them, and complementing these brilliant, talented lawyers and paralegals with technology, whereby I could mold it into what I thought was the efficient deployment of that tech and train and develop these young lawyers and paralegals in the way that I thought was a better way of giving advice. I banned Latin maxims. Like, lawyers love talking in Latin because, of course, the consumer, the client, typically doesn't understand Latin, and therefore they can charge more because it's more complex or difficult. So this whole philosophy of doing law differently and doing it better, in my opinion, resonated. And from this wee Northeast practice, I was able to grow into England and Wales, to clear up in Scotland in terms of client base, and to take that business into revenue spaces and to territories that it had never been in. But it was all down to brilliant people enabled by technology and innovative use of technology. And again, I think that's a theme. I have a number of different businesses that I'm involved in, I'm interested in, but innovation and disruption for the betterment of the customer experience is, I think, what gets me really excited. And it gets me excited, but it gets engagement from your client base, whether it's a corporate client or a personal client in professional advice. I think they all want the same thing. They want to feel valued. They want to feel important. They want to get good quality advice. You probably have to have a bit of likability. The way they interact with you has to be frictionless and efficient. And ultimately, they want to have good outcomes. So if you can figure out a way to do things that tick all those boxes in professional advice, I think you'll probably be successful. And it was always strange to me that other people didn't have that absolute clarity of what good looked like. And it was probably only a few years ago that I had this epiphany that this was how I saw it. And most people perhaps didn't see it like that for reasons previously stated. Often the structures of legal businesses and professional advice businesses would dictate that those type of innovations and disruptions is turkeys voting for Christmases. So the output of my innovation was I needed less lawyers and less paralegals. So it didn't really make me very popular.
And just out of interest, in terms of your kind of your group of friends or business associates, then were you kind of interacting with people other than lawyers then?
Yeah,
I was going to say
it's really good. I'm sure I've said many times I love the legal profession. It's enabled me to provide for my family, to have a really varied and interesting career. But lawyers are a funny old bunch. As I said a moment ago, often many of us, and I would include myself in this, are probably on the spectrum. We're high functioning. There's a lot of egos out there. That sometimes lawyers are just too clever to hang out with in your downtime because they want to talk about clever lawyery things. I've always been attracted to entrepreneurs. Like it's funny. I remember going to Entrepreneurial Scotland up in Gleneagles for my first conference. And I walked into this room and Chris van der Kyle, one of Scotland's most fantastic entrepreneurs, was the host. I met Mike Welsh, who grew and scaled Black Circles. I met Les Miko, who'd exited a business to Rentokil. And throughout the day, I met these people who talked my language, were finishing my sentence. You interacted with them, you had that proximity to them, and you felt like this tangible energy that they had. You saw the world the same way. You were sharing conversations and experiences, and you were like, yeah, that's exactly how I see it. And it was that moment, and again, you have these life journeys and you have the business journey that we all go on. And that was definitely one of those profound realizations that I found my people. So I think I knew consciously, subconsciously, because of my endeavors with fake IDs and pizzas, I was an entrepreneur. But it probably was at that point in my late 20s that I went, this is what I am. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. I've got those skill sets and that knowledge now, which has helped me inherently, but I'm an entrepreneur. I like building and fixing. And when I'm in the company of other entrepreneurs, that is really my happy place. If you can find your people as you journey through life, your community in Scotland, our clan of people, my clan's the entrepreneurs. And you get so much from that. It's the energy, genuinely. You're a room full of entrepreneurs. You guys, and know these people. They're your community as well. Yeah. It's phenomenal. You leave a room full of entrepreneurs. You can be exhausted because there's been so much buzz and energy. But then you get the pals who are different sectors, maybe not anything to do with your core business, but actually you can kick about challenges and you can share successes and help them with the down days and help them celebrate the up days. But when you're in that community, it's so powerful for your soul, but actually amplifies what you're capable of doing as an entrepreneur, because you've got all these people who you're watching consciously, learning by osmosis, picking up these nuggets and sound bites. And it's one of these truisms, I think, in business. Surround yourself by, successful people, and actually by, association, you will pick up the habits that they have, and you will learn directly from things they share with you and knowledge they give. And for me, that's been one of the luckiest parts of my business journey. Wherever I have gone, I have found a community of entrepreneurs, but also guys who are further on in their journey than me, who are like very happy to share. And I think you find that a lot with entrepreneurs, that they're generous of spirit and time and knowledge. They don't hoard it. They're happy for you to be successful because, probably they've done it themselves. Yeah. And being mentored by smart, successful business people has been a massive asset to me.
And just, it was interesting you said, this is what I am I'm an entrepreneur, not an accountant or a lawyer. I was quite interested in that. But going back to that almost abundant mindset of the entrepreneur sharing, just to put that against lawyers, would they be kind of more selfishly guarding? Or
it's a really good question, Alan. Absolutely, inherently in the legal services sector. I always talk more broadly about professional advice because there's so much commonality between fund managers, wealth managers, accountants, lawyers. It's the same game. It's knowledge, right? I talked a moment ago about Latin maxims. I talk a lot about the complexities that professional advisors create, because the value we transfer to clients is taking complex information, difficult situations, often situations that are highly stressful for the client, and solving problems. And where the route to solving a problem is the possession of knowledge, it is hoarded. So you naturally work in an environment. I don't think you can criticize lawyers and professional advisors for not being collaborative, but it's in your DNA, because the more you know, the more secret sauce, the more templates and styles that are cleverer than the other law firm, the more precedents that you have, the more cases that you're aware of, your chances of being successful and overcoming an opponent in a contentious scenario or getting the best deal outcome in a non-contentious scenario is often based on the knowledge. But it's changing, right? I'm involved in a group of collaborative lawyers, managing partners of law firms in Scotland. I was with two of them in Glasgow yesterday. We have this very open philosophy in that we are changing how we do law. We are disruptive, we are innovative, we want to do things better. And there's a small group of us that see the world this way. There is an entirely, there's a significant marketplace for us to all go fishing in. And actually the power of us collaborating and sharing will amplify each other, which I think will mean that the rest of the less ambitious, less disruptive, more traditional competitors will eventually slowly, demise, go out of business, close the doors, be consolidated. Whereas we can amplify what we do by sharing knowledge, experience, and pooling that to achieve more together. So there are a few exceptions, but yeah, we're a funny old bunch, lawyers. And I never tell people I'm a lawyer, which is interesting, right? I think we're put along, it must be like the devil, politicians, and lawyers. That's the three people you wouldn't invite to a dinner party. So you try and avoid it if you can.
It's interesting though, because I think on the word entrepreneur has been watered down a lot. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good observation. I think in the age of social and digital media, everyone's an entrepreneur. You can't go on Facebook or LinkedIn or any of the platforms without having somebody who's got the next big idea. I mean, right now, technology, everyone's an AI entrepreneur, and you drill down to 9 out of 10 people who are building the next big AI thing, and they don't have a clue that it's not actually AI. It's probably clever coding or a nice spreadsheet. So ultimately, yeah, influencers have got a lot to answer for. Flip side of that is, though, I do love the fact, I'm very focused on what I want to achieve, but I like helping other people. I have this natural disposition to help. I find saying no really difficult. I was apologizing to somebody last night that I said I would help with something in their business that I haven't followed up on. Just a few plates spinning at the moment. But I love the fact that entrepreneurship is so visible. I don't think when I was growing up, I remember there was an entrepreneur's challenge at secondary school where you got given 10 quid and you had to make it into 100 quid that was a spin out of the economics standard grade, right? And that was probably the only reference I saw in my formative years to entrepreneurial spirit, entrepreneurial concepts. Whereas, yes, everyone is an entrepreneur and it's prolific, but isn't that great that there's a bunch of kids in a generation that's coming through where being an entrepreneur, a business owner, a creator, a founder is a legitimate career choice? I felt, I talked about my secondary education. When you had that conversation with your guidance teacher, you're almost steered towards education. You got some grades and you have to go and study. Whereas I'm legitimately having conversations with my 13-year-old now saying, I've never seen the world so opaque because of AI and the societal change that I think is going to come over the next decade. So actually being an entrepreneur and finding something that maybe isn't going to be disrupted by technology is the way to go. So yeah, long answer to your question. Entrepreneurialism is prolific, but I think on balance, it's a good thing.
We're only on chapter 5. So we better keep going. So you're in Aberdeen.
You need to explain the chapter.
Oh yeah. So well,
people are going to think
we've
scripted all this.
That's it. Well, we always ask all of our guests to send through, some pointers for us, and you structured yours in a very.
I wrote a novel, didn't I?
Yeah,
I wrote a book. So
well, it was a lot. We're on chapter 5. So you're in Aberdeen. You have built a cool thing from small to big. What was next?
So yeah, I'd say very few parts of my entrepreneurial journey have been adverse. I've been quite lucky. I've placed bets and made decisions that more often than not have worked out. But I find myself in a law firm where there was a change of management, and we had a managing partner and a board whereby they'd been very supportive of what I'd always done and how I saw the world and my crazy philosophy of disrupting legal services. And very much overnight, that changed, and the ability to be creative, to be innovative, to have autonomous decision making largely, disappeared. And I definitely found that claustrophobic. I actually, sat down with my wife and said that I've built something that I think I'd put 7 years of my life into building this department and help the wider business grow and scale, and blood, sweat, and tears. I'd missed kids' key events. I'd missed first steps. I'd not been there, because I was so obsessed with building this business and obsessed with this vision that I had. I'm completely obsessive as a person, and when I find something to go after, I'm all in. To sit there and go, I'm not enjoying this anymore. It's a bit like my accountancy moment, right? I'd gone into Deloitte. Everything should have been perfect. This great global business should have been my pathway and somewhere I'd never dreamed or thought of leaving. I got to that point with that business. And my wife, who is the polar opposite to me in every aspect of my personality, which is why we actually have such a successful marriage and partnership, said, unless you're happy, Rob, you're not the best version of yourself. So I made the decision I was going to go, which was the hardest thing. Imagine building your business. And unlike in other sectors, professional advisory businesses are partnerships, right? So you come in, you buy in, you go and get a loan from the bank, you earn well, that's the nature of the model. You earn well whilst you're practicing, but you don't get an exit. You don't sell your shares. You walk out the door and you get the nominal amount that's in your capital account in a partnership structure, and that's it. You don't get here's my 20% of the business that I built out from 5 million to 40 million, and can I have my equivalent value in a balance sheet valuation? You leave with the shirt that's on your back. So it was terrifying, and it was contentious, and it was difficult. I remember dark days, sitting in rooms thinking, what have I done? But I landed in a big English law firm. I'd been speaking to them about going to join them, helping them succession plan. Smart kids. This was the biggest English law firm outside the Magic Circle, north of England, super profitable, fast growing. Everybody around the boardroom table. I was the youngest ever equity partner, had been to Oxford and Cambridge. And it was possibly the most demanding, mentally challenging business environment that I'd ever been in, which I absolutely loved. The flip side of it was I'd come from this environment where I was the boss. I got to decide how we built the systems, which clients we went after, had a heavy influence on the business's global strategy, although it was a partnership. Yeah, you are a team. And I got to steer the ship, and I felt happy. I'm happiest when I'm driving the car as opposed to a passenger. But this business was red tape. It was bureaucracy. And this is that every entrepreneur, I think, will tell you the same. It's probably that profound moment often when they get off the bus. I could see opportunities. I could see deals. I could see ways to disrupt, to make more money. And it was, well, can you put a paper together? Can you go to this committee? Can you go to that committee? And I remember one opportunity, £1 million a year revenue, like absolute shoe-in. Old business, I would have had it done, nailed. We would have been revenue generative. And the client would have been happy. I would have been happy. We would have built a nice long-term client relationship. A year later, with that business, we were still not crossing the line in terms of the client onboarding, and they went somewhere else. So I thought, this is not, again, this is vocalizing all the chapters of my story. There are all obviously profound moments where I clearly go, this is not fun anymore, or this is not right for me. So 6 months from COVID, this was probably August, September, before COVID, I thought, right, I'm going to go and build another law firm. I've probably got 10 years of what I've been scribbling down in my notebook, my journal, about what good looks like. I think I've proven to myself I can build businesses, I can train people, I understand a balance sheet, I know how you fund businesses, I know how you get clients. There's probably enough stuff here that I can take everything and go and properly open my own shop, because in that partnership model, you had almost like a branch office within a chain of shops. That's how partnerships work. You own your own department and kind of get your own sort of sector to work in. But I want to do this differently. So I went and spoke to pretty much every smart business person that I knew, bought lots of coffees, had lots of lunches, told them the story that I had for Murray Group, which was this vision I had in my mind. And bizarrely, having read the Lancet paper, if you remember at the start of COVID, there was a sort of lack of understanding of what it was. But I read the Lancet paper and thought, this could be the end of society as we know it. What a great time to start a business. So yeah, in the middle of COVID, I thought, yeah, I will build my dream. And that was Murray Group in 2020, was it? Was that COVID?
Yeah.
You guys know. Anyway,
March 2020.
That was the start of the recent journey into building your own shop.
So go on, and what was that then, the Murray Group?
Everything I'd learned in a 8-page spreadsheet. Put the customer first, absolute obsession with customer journey, customer experience, customer outcomes. Hire the best, smartest people and enable them through brilliant technology to do their job more efficiently and to give those customers the best experience. I was able to buy a ailing law firm in Scotland, which had been owned by Capita at one point, for a nominal sum. It was in a precarious position. It had been trading down for the last 3-4 years, and I don't think had much of a runway ahead of it. So to get the apparatus of a law firm in terms of people, systems, some clients, some revenue, was a real asset, because you can imagine when you're opening any new business and you want to achieve scale, as most entrepreneurs want to do, the day one, when you go after your dream is quite scary because you've got such a long way ahead. If you can turbocharge that, that's quite exciting. So getting an out-of-the-box law firm, albeit that had a lot not in its favour, and moulding it into what you wanted to build was amazing. So we got a law firm. I got a board, 5 dragons who were all leading large national or Scottish businesses who became NEDs, twisted their arm, and within 18 months managed to get to 6 million revenue. And that was simply because we did things differently and better and made some bold moves that paid off.
And out of interest, how did that business come onto your radar then in the first place?
Back to Stuart Hendry. Stuart should be paying me. I think I still send clients to him this day. In fact, I'm sure I sent somebody to him this week. He sat me down in the first week of my traineeship and said, there's loads of great lawyers, but the best ones that will make the most money and be most successful will have the best black books. And I spent most of my 20s being obsessive about going to the opening of an envelope. Everywhere there was a social event, a business event, a black tie dinner, I would be there. And I was putting names into my old-fashioned Nokia. Nowadays, you add people on LinkedIn. but I put names in there. When I was in court, I would make time to spend, times when the sheriff wasn't on the bench speaking to the other agents. When I was at CPD events, I would speak to people. So I built up, and still to this day have an epically good network of contacts in the industry which I inhabit. I made a habit of studying the industry. So I've always, across the UK, Scotland, I could probably tell you, the top 100 firms, what their revenue points are, who the key players are. I know what technology they're using. And I felt it was always an asset to know your peer group, to have allies and friends in the peer group, to know the firms that you admired and the people that you admired, and to study them. So when I wanted to go and get this nucleus of the business, I probably had half a dozen names on a list that I phoned up and said, can I buy you a coffee? Because I might want to buy your legal business. So.
Very good. And on that networking as well, we talked just earlier on about the kind of community and how important that is. Can you give us your take on community building?
Critical storytelling and community building. I was really lucky to be part of Entrepreneurial Scotland's Scale Up program. I think it was the second cohort. And it's a phenomenal thing. Anybody that's listening and watching, if you've got a scaling business, look this up and see if you can become part of it. It was a super competitive process to get into the program. But when you were in it, you got exposure to some phenomenal business people and mentors. And one of the businesses that we got exposure to was Bob Keeler. Bob, former CEO of Wood Group. I'd again admired Bob as an Aberdonian. I'd watched him grow that business. And he had always talked about storytelling. And that's what he does now, as well as trying to bring Aberdeen back from the edge of disaster in terms of its oil and gas demise. He champions storytelling in business, and he teaches you how to storytell. Along with storytelling, I think community building is something that Stuart and other successful entrepreneurs had always suggested was important. Your black book is one of your communities. Your mentors is one of your other communities. I suspect there's a community that are your pals who are maybe 1 degree removed from business, but maybe they nurture your soul. They're the guys that you go for a beer with or a game of golf or go and watch your football team. And having those communities that support you emotionally, intellectually, that you can share ideas, collaborate with, help each other. Again, I think it is an absolute core theme for any successful entrepreneur. You can have the best vision in the world. You can have the best idea. But if you're unable to take that to market, and often when you've got no budget, telling your story to a group of heavily influential people, to your community, is the number one way you can market what your product is and the business that you're building. So for me, Edinburgh's business community, Scotland's business community, the global Scots diaspora. I've been really lucky to work around the world, and wherever you go, Scots are so welcoming. We travel well as a nation. You'll find Scots running and leading businesses, all around the globe. It's in our DNA. I think inherently we're an entrepreneurial people, and that community, domestically, internationally, intra-UK, has been so important to me. With everything I've ever sought to achieve, there were people who could help you on that journey in your community. And I think as an entrepreneur, get your product right, get your proposition right, but make sure you've got a really powerful black booking community.
So you're building these communities, you get your dragons, you're 18 months in, 6 mil revenue.
Yeah.
Where do you keep going? It's just chaos.
Well, it was, and I thrive in chaos. Like on the days that it's blackest, darkest, hardest, difficultest, that is where my happy place is. I've been saying that to people in the last few months as we've been back at a build stage of a business. And I thrive in adversity. I thrive in the difficult days. I thrive in the long days. And I after 18 months, we'd got to a bit of an equilibrium. The hard early yards that you have to make when you're scaling had been done. The dream was starting to crystallize. We were getting successes. There was conversations happening. There was letters of commitment coming in from businesses that were going to back us with instructions and new business. We were expanding geographically. And I got a phone call from one of the dragons who hadn't invested. And again, this is back to the power of your black book and your community, and also building rapport and relationships, making connections at a human level. So this gentleman was a guy called Chris Giles of Giles Insurance. So look Chris up. phenomenally charismatic individual. I think his other passions are racehorses and generally leading a very flamboyant and fun lifestyle, but brilliant businessman. Chris hadn't invested, but he remembered me. And I think I'd made a favourable impression. He said, I need you to go to Leeds to meet somebody. I said, okay, Chris, I met you once about 2 years ago. You didn't invest, and now you say you need me to go to Leeds to meet somebody. Is this a drug deal, or what's happening?
No, it's fake IDs.
It's fake IDs. Yeah, I remember you. So I went down to Leeds and I met the CEO of a private equity group, a private equity backed group, a professional advice business, who after 4 hours, we had lunch. I remember it in Leeds. We were finishing each other's sentences. It was a proper bromance. It was like that moment in entrepreneurial Scotland where you were in this room full of people and it just felt right. And I went, I've never met anyone like you. You're like me. You're like my brother from another mother. So I'd met this kindred spirit. He was a bit further on in his journey than me. He'd got that seed funding. He's got the VC funding. He'd got the private office money. He'd got the PE money. And he'd built a UK-wide professional advice business that had a fund management division, a wealth management division, a tax division, a legal division, and he had a dream and a vision that absolutely subscribed to everything that I was doing with Murray Group. We had a property, legal, financial set of disciplines, and we were tech-enabled. This business was tech-enabled, and he said, "I want to buy your business." 18 months in, when you've distilled your last decade of learning and your dream, your baby. I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs come here and speak about their business being their baby. Somebody coming along saying, I want to take your baby away after 18 months when it's still cute and in its nappies and doing all the fun baby stuff. And you can see that pathway ahead, that journey is going to be fun of them, going to school, having their first sports day, getting married. I could see the Murray Group journey ahead. But as happens in the world of private equity, a number was pushed across the table. It was an exceptional number. Entrepreneurs talk in terms of IRR quite a lot. So you deploy capital, what's your return on that? How long does it take you to get that return? And when I went round my board of NEDs, who were also minority investors, to a person, each one of them said, take it. I know it's your dream, I know it's your baby, but taking that liquidity event, taking that deal will facilitate you doing whatever you want to do next. I think at that time I was 41. That's still young. Again, I would say to any entrepreneur, it doesn't matter how old you are. You read some of these great success stories of people who founded businesses in their 50s and 40s. It's never too late. If you've got a dream and a passion and you believe in it, go after it. And I had a board of people who said, yeah, you'll do it again. Just take the money and go. So a phenomenal opportunity for me in that it wasn't a take the money and F off. You don't need to bleep that one. It was become part of the next part of that business's journey. Join a global board of people who are trying to change the world. So I got to spend 3 years taking that business. When I started, we were, I think, 20 million revenue, 250 people. Roll forward 3 years, 100 million revenue and 700 people. I got to go and work in Asia and the Middle East. I got to open offices. I got to meet fantastic people. I got to understand how the world of business operates out with these shores. And there are different practices. The Middle East is so nuanced in how you have to do business. The relationships that I got to pick up, the skill sets I got to pick up, getting to work in the world of a PE-backed business. Again, a lot of people aspire to get PE money. And it's great because it enables growth. It enables you to do things only you can do in your dreams often as an entrepreneur. But it's a completely different environment. It's hard, it's tough, you're a commodity. When you go into that world, you need to know what you are giving up, what you are exchanging as an entrepreneur who is the master of your own destiny to a PE-backed entrepreneur. But wouldn't change it for the world. Absolutely loved it. Some phenomenal people, phenomenal experiences. Again, learned so much, take elements of everything that I learned in those 3 years, and to this day they're still relevant and important. So yeah, madness. COVID through to 18 months, through to sitting on a terrace in Dubai, wondering what I'd done with my life. So yeah.
And I think we're almost to today. we're on the final, well, not the final chapter.
Let's hope not, Alex.
So what?
Next chapter.
The next chapter. What you're up to right now?
So yeah, it's madness. I don't know how I do this to myself. So I went away at Christmas, and I genuinely contemplated retiring. 45, had this dream that I would pay off my mortgage by the time I was 40. And then I'd go and travel the world and maybe go back and study things that were interesting, read lots of books, hang out with my wife, hang out with my kids. I'm quite a simple human being. But I thought, I'm probably a little bit too young. I'm probably get bored quite quickly if I do that. So I was really lucky. I am now doing 2 or 3 cool projects, and that'll slowly become 3 or 4 cool projects. My day job is with the Simpson Marwick group. Simpson Marwick is a phenomenal, we're Edinburgh Business Stories, phenomenal Scottish Edinburgh legal brand. Opened its doors in 1886 on Heriot Row, not far from these shores. Over the last 140 years, that business has gone on a journey. Most recently, preeminent where I trained in the Scottish courts as the place you went to become an advocate. You did your traineeship at Simpson and Marwick, a brilliant litigation practice, did the Lockerbie trial, did a number of like high profile litigation cases, had a brilliant team of estate agents, a brilliant team of conveyancing lawyers, but had been acquired about 12 years ago by Clyde & Co, the global law firm, billions of dollars of revenue, wanted the insurance litigation practice of Simpson & Marwick, which had meant over the last decade, bits and pieces of Simpson & Marwick had found new homes. The family law team, the employment law team had very diplomatically gone to pastures new, and have gone on to prosper and be successful. But this opened the door to get this brilliant Scottish legal brand. And you'll know in business, the power of the brand is ultimate. If you can harness that legacy that we have, that people know and trust. I get people phoning up, and I see the mailbox for the business on a daily basis. People who were clients 40 years ago, they still phone up and say, can you help me? So the brand affinity is massive. The brand recognition is massive. People know the ampersand. We have a team of common theme again, phenomenally talented people. So Ricky Nichol, who scaled and exited Comms World, Graham St. John, his CFO, they've been very supportive at board level. Graham is probably one of the smartest accountants that I've ever met. And I think you always need that numbers guy. Ricky is an archetypal entrepreneur. I don't know if he's been on yet. Has he? Yeah. So Ricky is phenomenal. But we're a property core business. So we have 2 of my fellow directors, Gary and Sean, have spent the last decade selling property, buying property, and are bloody good at it. So we have this vision whereby the brand, these brilliant people, and we will get more brilliant people. I think it's a bit like the Avengers, right? So who am I? I'm definitely not, I'm probably Nick Fury. I'm the guy in the background trying to find all these superpowered people. So the theory is, take this brilliant brand, take these brilliant people, enable them with new, innovative, brilliant technology, have the absolute commitment to that customer experience, the customer journey. Do that in a non-transactional way. Lawyers are terrible about spending all that time. Cost of acquisition, we talk about in business circles a lot, getting that client through the door. They made the buying decision. They want to use you to do a will. They want to use you to buy a house. They want to take a mortgage through your financial services business. And then we forget about them because we've got so many other clients to keep happy who want to complete a transaction. You focus on that. So the theory is, and I'm absolutely committed to this and believe it will be profoundly successful, do all those things, but view the client as a long-term journey, right? We will take you through the door, join Simpson Marwick, be part of our family, do that one transaction really well. But we'll keep talking to you. God forbid, we will onboard you as a client, but then we'll give you a digital wallet. We will allow you to store your title deeds in there. We'll update that to house price data and give you real-time value of your property. We will allow you to store other information in your digital wallet. So when you need to do your tax return, you just release it to your accountant on an annual basis. We will update you on a transaction in a digital way, the same way that when you buy a car or book a holiday, you expect that experience to be digital first with a great brand and great people. Take all those norms, drop it into professional advice to legal and property services, and you win. So yeah, Simpson and Marwick Group, I believe, will win and be successful by driving better customer outcomes and caring more and delivering better experiences. And that's one of my hustles. Also, I have a consultancy called Entrepreneur in Residence. I talk a little bit about feeling compelled to give back, to help others. I did a post on LinkedIn at the start of the year, 45 seconds, saying I was going to do this thing called Entrepreneur in Residence. This was my semi-retirement phase. And I thought no more about it. But roll on 5 months. I have a roster of clients who I work with, a tech business, a fire and security business, a global leadership business I'm going to join in a couple of months' time. I have 2 or 3 other businesses who I would love to work with, but genuinely, these need to be 1 to 2 day a month commitments with, texts, emails, dinners, coffees in between, because I don't have any more time to give. I absolutely love that. And the cool thing about that is I perhaps didn't realize that all the learnings from my background in professional services and the fabric that you need to build a business, the foundations you lay for growth, are totally transferable into pretty much any sector that you could imagine. So I get to have these 2 or 3 businesses that I'm involved in with brilliant leaders, with vision, with traction, with revenue growth, and actually can genuinely help them and make a difference. And that actually is super exciting. I'm involved in agentic AI, so I love technology, right? If you don't know about agentic AI, you need to. This will be the thing that transforms most aspects of business. Figuring out how you deploy that into your business today is the number one challenge I would set your audience as they leave this podcast. That startup is embryonic, but it could be a unicorn. We've got some super clever people involved, a global leader in AI, somebody who's scaling a tech business that I think we can fold some tech in. That could be a thing. And I love Lukey House, my charity. So Lukey is a Scottish neurological respite centre based out in East Lothian, one of the most phenomenal places that you have ever been to. If you have a condition like MS, MND, and somebody cares for you 24/7, you can go stay there for 10 days and get a bit of respite care. So I am passionate about helping Lukey grow and expand and help more people. So I think those are the things that I'm doing at the moment. There's probably other things I'm forgetting, but those are the big ones. So.
Do you need to take a breath?
Yeah.
By the time this comes out, there'll be 4 other flipping things you'll be able to
do. You know what? I would hope so. So I think that's the reality. And if you can do that as a business person, find things that you are interested in, that you're passionate about, get to work with great people on a daily basis. It is hard. Like I'm properly back, from the guy that had a PA, and I remember a distinct point in time in my career, had built that first business, and the systems were awesome. They were phenomenal. I had dashboards coming out my ears. I had MI. The revenue was brilliant. The EBITDA was amazing. I came in and did 9 to 11. It was check in with your direct reports, clear your inbox, and you were done. And it was the saddest and happiest part of my career because everything worked. So we're now back into that building, fixing, creating, working with all these people who have this shared vision. That's the fun part of it. And imagine if you could spend the rest of your days on this earth doing that stuff. And so you joke about like the next 4 things. Genuinely, if there isn't another thing coming along, I would be really disappointed because all these things I think will be successful to different degrees because we've got the right people doing clever things with adequate resources and support. But ultimately, it would be rubbish if they all just got built, fixed, and were profitable. And where was the next thing that was about to go bust or needed to be manipulated or created? So watch this space.
Yeah, Rob, we ask all our guests, what is your guiding principle in business?
It's a really easy one, and I'm sure you've had this before. It's don't be a dickhead, right? I think that's the 3rd time I've sworn on your podcast. It's a soft swear. From the All Blacks, the Kiwi rugby team, I remember distinctly that this was a core value that they had, and it plays true across, I think, all aspects of your business. Don't be a dickhead when you're around the board table. I believe profoundly in radical candor. It's like an inherent Scottish characteristic, that ability to speak frankly. So build a board that aren't dickheads. Hire people that aren't dickheads. If your people are good people who care for each other, care for their clients, respect each other, and exhibit good behaviors and demonstrate the good corporate but good moral compasses, you've got a greater propensity to be successful. And if you can blend together, the leadership, the engine of people, the talent pipeline, make sure that the next generation that's coming through to your business, they subscribe to that value set, then I think people see and feel that in the culture that you build. Your clients sense it and feel it and experience. And when that culture is strong, you can have that great brand, the great product, the great technology. Unless people are passionate about coming in on a Monday morning in mid-December and jumping into their role to change the world and to make that business better and to give clients and customers a great experience, your chances of achieving scale and being ultimately really successful are limited. So if you build a team full of people who aren't dickheads, then you'll probably be successful.
Rob, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story.
Pleasure.
And we wish you all the luck in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.